Hey y'all, so I guess today's the day where I tell you my birth story. So this video has been a long time coming. I mean, my baby is almost 10 months old, but I finally thought now is the time that I wanted to share this story. And I'm in my usual like story time telling spot, except for it's a little bit of a different angle here. So hopefully it looks good for the visuals, whatnot. I don't know. But anyways, we're just gonna hop right into this story. My baby was born May 24th, 2024. So last year. And how that came to be was that her original birth date, well, her due date was supposed to be June 17th, 2024. So as you guys know, that's about 3 weeks apart. So she did come early, and it was not because she, miraculously showed up early. It was almost forced. So if anyone watching works in the health field or has a little bit of more expert knowledge on this subject, I would like for you to comment down below and just let me know like how you feel my birth story makes you feel. Like, was it forced? Was it just the doctors doing what they needed to do? Am I exaggerating? Like, I don't know. I just have some mixed feelings about this story. So anyways, it might have been May 21st, and because I feel like it was 3 days before, and I was just laying at home on FaceTime with my boyfriend, actually 36 weeks pregnant, and I'm just like chilling, right? And then when it's time for me to get up and go to bed, I realize like when I get up to stand up on my feet, oh wait, hold on guys, I'm sorry, I'm such a like scrambled person when I tell stories sometimes. I've been told I'm a good storyteller, but I can like skip and hop around a lot, so excuse me in advance for that. I actually felt some swelling in my feet when I was standing up in the shower earlier that night. And then fast forward to when I'm on FaceTime with my boyfriend and I'm standing up to go to bed, I actually feel it. Like I stand up and I can like feel my like the water retention like in my feet. So I'm like, ooh, like my feet haven't swelled up this entire pregnancy, except for one time when we went to the beach. And it was because it was just really hot in the car and then I had to walk. But the second that I sat down, the swelling was gone and was gone for the rest of the day. So then fast forward to here, I'm like, ooh, is this a problem? Because I know swelling during pregnancy, especially in your feet, can be common. But when I started to go on this little Google train, I was like, okay, like swelling in your feet, bad, da da da. It was basically saying it was normal, but if you have significant swelling in one foot over the other, then you should probably go see a doctor because you could possibly have a blood clot. So I'm like, ooh, we don't want blood clots. So of course I'm paranoid and freaking out, and I decide, okay, let me go to my parents' room. So I get up, go to my parents' room, and I'm like, hey, like, and by the way, it's like 3 a.m. because I was a night owl and stayed up throughout the night. And so I was like, guys, like, do you think I should go to the hospital? Woke them up, like showed them my foot, and they're like, oh yeah, that looks pretty bad, but you should be fine. Let's take your blood pressure just in case, because they had like a blood pressure machine at the house with them. So I'm like, okay. So we take my blood pressure and it's higher than normal. It's not significantly like eyebrow raising high, but for me and my normal blood pressure, it was high. And every single time I went to the doctor, my blood pressure would be normal. It would be great. In fact, they'd be like, oh, that's perfect. So the fact that it was high was a little bit like, we should probably go to the hospital. So here we are, May 21st, heading over to the hospital at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And we check in, and basically I'm sitting in the like, what's it called, like triage, the place where you first go into. I'm gonna have to look that up, I don't know, but I think that's what it was called. And so we're sitting there, basically we're about there for an hour. During this time, they're kind of like checking my vitals, just checking me, like running the tests I need to run. And then about an hour passes by, and then a nurse comes in the room, and she's kind of just like, so you're gonna have this baby tonight. So I look at my mom and I'm like, did you hear what she just said? Like, tonight? What is she talking about? And so I'm over here freaking out because it's 4 o'clock in the morning at this point. The father of my baby is still asleep. He lives in a different city. I couldn't even wake him up if I wanted to because he's asleep in a different city. And by the time he gets over here, the baby might be born already. Like, I was confused. Also, I was confused because I thought I was just being extra precautious and just taking the steps to go to the hospital when I really didn't need to. And I was kind of just expecting them to be like, okay, like, you're fine, like, you know, first time moms typically do this, they get paranoid, but you're good, going back home. And that's not what happened. So I was confused, right? So basically, then once she came in there saying that, the doctor then came into the room, the doctor who was like assigned to me for that period of time, because there will be a bunch of doctors who come out in the mix of this story. And she basically was like, okay, yeah, so the reason why we have to do this is because your blood pressure is extremely high. So the blood pressure that I had when I was at home, I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't as high as when I got to the hospital. Now, personally, I believe that my blood pressure was higher in the hospital because I was scared. I was pregnant. I didn't want anything to happen to my baby. I was scared. Guys, please don't mind my hair or anything. I'm editing the video, but I forgot to add a very crucial part to this part of the story. So not only was I scared, but I was in the bed, in the triage, uncontrollably shaking. Like, first time in my life has this ever happened. It was like I was cold, but I wasn't actually cold. I was just shivering, shaking the whole time, like low key, high key, I was shaking. It was embarrassing because I couldn't even like stop it. It was uncontrollable. And my mom would like come over and like hold my hand and trying to rub me and help me and calm my nerves. That's how nervous I was. So I can imagine that my blood pressure had skyrocketed at that point. So I don't know if that attests to anything. Once again, any health professionals can help me out here, but I'm like almost 100% positive that's what pushed my blood pressure that high. And so it's not the first time where I've heard in a story where when you go to the hospital, your blood pressure skyrockets and become higher than it actually would have been to begin with. So my blood pressure was reading crazy high. Now, I don't know if I'm getting this wrong, but I feel like it was like 170 over something, right? That sounds terrible. So the doctors are freaking out and they're like, okay, your blood pressure is extremely high and you have some swelling in your feet. So we're gonna diagnose you with mild preeclampsia, which, if you guys don't know, preeclampsia is not, I was gonna say a disease, but it's a condition that some pregnant women could face. And when you have that, it becomes very high risk pregnancy. But the entire duration of my pregnancy, I was never diagnosed with this. In fact, everything that I had was completely normal and fine. And then this one night when I had swelling in my feet, I immediately went to the hospital and now they're diagnosing me with preeclampsia. So it kind of went from 0 to 100 really quick. And I'm on my 36th week of pregnancy. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm almost done. So I should be able to just like take this diagnosis on the chin and that be that. Well, no, because they told me that I was going to have to stay in the hospital until, well, actually at first when they said you're having this baby tonight, I guess they misunderstood and thought I was already over 37 weeks. So they were just like, we're just gonna give birth to the baby. And then I was like, hold on. I heard that you can't at least like give birth until you're at least 37 weeks, and I'm 36 weeks in 2 days, so we're gonna have to figure something out about that. I don't feel comfortable. And then the doctor's like, oh, I thought you were more than that. And I was like, no. And she's like, okay, well, yeah, you're gonna have to stay here in the hospital until you're 37 weeks. And I'm like, great. So now I have to stay in the hospital for 5 days, just sitting here waiting to give birth, basically monitored and poked and prodded, the exact opposite of what I wanted, because I was really scared of going to a hospital to begin with. I still hadn't decided what I actually wanted with my birthing process, which I know 36 weeks I probably should have had it figured out, but I was still like, should I have a home birth? Should I go to one of those facilities? Should I go to the hospital? Don't really want to go to the hospital because of the statistics with Black women who give birth. Like, it's just not good, and I just didn't want to deal with any of that. I had a really rampant fear of that, and exactly what my fears were was coming true. And during the course of the story, you'll hear that everything that I was afraid of quite literally happened. And I really don't even know how I made it through that. I think it was because I was drugged the whole time, so I wasn't really thinking properly, but I somehow made it out. Okay, so she told me I was gonna have to stay in the hospital until 37 weeks. So I'm like, great. So by this time, it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. So I decided to call my boyfriend's mom. So my boyfriend's mom can, because she was in the house with him, can go wake up my boyfriend and tell him like, hey, like, she's in the hospital, come over now. So he did. He rode on over there. I think he got to the hospital at maybe like 7 a.m., 7:30, around that time. By the time that he got to the hospital, I had finally gotten my placement to go to the next room. So I wasn't in the triage place anymore. I actually got a room in the labor and delivery section. So I was in that room. He was there with me. And so for that, so this was May 21st going into May 22nd. So this first full day that I was in the hospital, it was May 22nd. This whole day, they are basically monitoring me, my blood pressure, every hour. So every hour they had to come in. Well, actually, I had the thing on my wrist, like the blood pressure cuff thing on my wrist the entire day. But every hour they would come in and check the machine and see like where my blood pressure was doing. By the way, in order to help my blood pressure go down, because they said they had to do this, which once again, if you're a doctor or anything in that realm, please give me some insight on this, because first time I ever heard of this, but they told me that they had to give me magnesium in order to get my blood pressure back down. Even though I was convinced that my blood pressure would just naturally go down because I wasn't in the shock of just being at the hospital anymore, and I had never had a blood pressure that high in my life. But obviously maybe they don't know that, so they just decided to go ahead and give me magnesium. So they put magnesium into my IV, and I'm on magnesium this whole time to bring down my blood pressure. So when my blood pressure was when I was on that, my blood pressure was going down. Another nurse, like not any of the two that I said before, just another one who was on shift that day, came in and was basically like, oh, like you're looking good, you're probably going to be able to leave the hospital, and then you might have to come back at the 37-week mark and get readmitted to give birth, but you should be good, like you shouldn't have to stay in the hospital this whole time because you're reading really good. And I'm like, okay, that's great. So that whole rest of the day, I'm like telling my boyfriend like, oh yes, like I can't, I'm so happy because I really did not want to stay in this hospital. Like we're gonna go home, we're gonna come back, have some time to like pack up some things that we need to pack, get the nursery together just a little bit more, because at this time we had like just started the nursery like the week before. So thank God that I put a move on that nursery thing, because everyone's telling me like, wait, like you don't have to do it right now. And I'm like, guys, but she could come any minute. Like I want to get the nursery done. And so just the week before any of this happened, we had just started on the nursery, but we didn't finish. So during this time where I just got stuck in the hospital, like I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, the nursery isn't done. We don't have these things together. We don't have that thing together, right? So I'm excited to go back home and be able to do this before the baby comes. So remember, a nurse told me that I was going to be able to go home, right? So next morning, the doctor comes in, and so the doctor that I originally had, who had admitted me, I guess, to the hospital, she had basically said she talked to another doctor, and that doctor, they decided that it was best if I stay. And not only that I stay, but I was going to be induced that day. It's morning, guys. I just woke up thinking I'm about to go home, and they say, actually, you're going to be induced. And the reason why they said this is because they were basically saying that they thought it was better. But remember, guys, the whole reason why I was supposed to be in the hospital in the first place was because I was supposed to be waiting until 37 weeks, because that's when the baby is like, okay, at this point it's considered an early pregnancy, but it's not preterm. So we're just gonna go ahead and wait until 37 weeks, which would have been 5 days from me being admitted. So now it's the second day, so we have 4 more days to wait, and they're telling me, no, you're actually going to be induced today, which really confused me, because then doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of me waiting until it's safe for the baby to be born? Which really made me question, do they really have my best interest at mind, or are they trying to hurry up and get me out of the hospital? Keep that in mind, because somewhere around the course of the day, they would say that it was actually best if I got a C-section that day. Hey y'all, once again, sorry for my appearance, but I realized I missed a really important part right here, and that's, they basically came in and told me about the C-section probably like at most 2 hours before I actually got the C-section. So I went through this whole day of May 23rd, and then around like, I remember it being close to midnight. It was like 11ish, and that was around the time that I was being told that I probably am going to get a C-section. And because I remember specifically thinking, like, is she going to be born on May 23rd, or is she going to be born on May 24th? It's really down to a matter of how, like, quickly this process moves of getting into the C-section. So she ended up being born at 1:10 on May 24th, but, you know, it was teetering that line. So that's why I'm putting the dates up, because, you know, basically it's just funny how, depending on how everything plays out, it depends on when your baby is born. So she very much could have been born on May 23rd, because it was basically like that night. It was 1 o'clock. To me, someone who stays up that late anyways, that was basically May 23rd. But technically, it's May 24th, so yeah. Which, once again, it felt to me like they were just trying to rush the process and just get me out of there and out of their hair. Not actually looking at my situation and seeing that it wasn't necessary. It just was not necessary. There might be a little bit of concerns here and there, but it was not an emergency to the point where I needed a C-section. It was kind of just like, we think we should do this. And so in hindsight, I just got really upset and mad and frustrated, because everything that I said I did not want to happen happened, and it only really happened because the doctors, I felt, did not have my best interest at mind, and they kind of just wanted to speed the process. Something that should be really beautiful, sacred, and my own, they kind of took it into their own hands and said, this is what you're gonna do, actually. And I actually had a doula, which a doula is someone who's supposed to help you, like, advocate for yourself in the hospital process. And okay, wait, I'm skipping ahead of myself. I'll get to the doula part in a little bit. But so here we are. They're basically like, I'm going through the induction process, and this is when, okay, so I was already being pumped with the magnesium earlier, right? And then they then gave me the, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to look it up because I forgot what the name is, but it's whatever the drug is or the pill is that they give you to speed up the induction process. Basically, whatever they give you to make you go into labor, like, unnaturally, right? If you're about to be scheduled for an induction, you're going to take this thing so the process can start. So they then gave me that in the morning. I ate, I took a shower because that was the last time I was going to be able to eat. They waited an hour, and then I had to take that, and then I was basically on bed rest from that point on. So whole day I'm on bed rest, slowly starting to feel contractions coming on. Nothing bad at this point. Like, I'm feeling like bad, but it's not terrible. So I would say I got dilated. The last time that I remember someone checking me and telling me how far along I was 2 centimeters dilated. I believe that they didn't check between this time, or I just was out of it and don't remember. But I think by the time I actually was told, okay, you need to get a C-section, I would have been like 4 centimeters dilated by that point. But I have no clue because I was never told. The last time I remember being told, I was 2 centimeters dilated. So it's nighttime, right? And by the way, everything in between this time is really hazy because I told you I was on magnesium, I was on this other drug, I was on bed rest. I was basically drugged out and completely out of it. So I don't remember basically anything during this time other than this really embarrassing story, which I am going to tell just because I feel like there's a lot of things that people don't tell you during the birthing process, and you're just not prepared for. And you know, we have all these moms, we have all these aunties, all these cousins, sisters who give birth, and they just don't pass this information along, and sometimes things are kept secret. So I'm being very candid about my experience. So this was a part of my experience. I felt like I had to poop. I felt like I had to poop for a good hour and a half, right? And by the way, I was on bed rest, which not everyone is put on bed rest during birth. I was put on bed rest because obviously I was getting an induction. I was on magnesium. They didn't want me to flip out and fall and pass out or whatever. So anyways, so I had a bedpan that I had to use. So I had to keep calling the nurse in. Hey nurse, can I get the bedpan? I really had to poop. Hey nurse, can I get the little stool thing? I really had to poop. So I was trying, guys. I vividly remember this. There was probably like 5 people in the room. There was like my mom, my boyfriend's mom, my nana would be in there sometimes, then my boyfriend, and then like whatever nurse was on staff, and I'm over here just trying to poop the whole time. Like, and it was so bad because it just, the feeling wouldn't go away, right? And so I was so convinced that I had to poop. Now that I think about it, it was clearly just the baby. I was in the induction process, so it was probably the baby, and that was what I felt like I needed to do, right? But anyways, so fast forward, and it's like nighttime, and basically I think they're checking the baby's heartbeat, and they said that the baby's heart rate was slowing down, right? Decreasing, getting lower, if you will. So fun fact, my baby actually had a really low heartbeat throughout the duration of my pregnancy. Not really low to where she could not sustain life, because obviously she was healthy, she was doing perfectly fine, but it was on the lower end of that spectrum. I remember her heart rate was always like 120, like 120, 124, around that like section, right? So her heart rate was already fairly on the low side. So when they give her the magnesium, because they gave me the magnesium, it's going to my baby, that made my baby droggy, just like I was drugged out, and so was my baby, right? So what did you expect? You've had me on magnesium for over 24 hours at this point. Like, so of course my baby's heart rate is dropping, right? And so instead of just taking me off of the magnesium and monitoring the baby to see what happens, they just say, you should have a C-section, right? So of course everyone in the room is like, what? Like, this is coming out of nowhere. This wasn't part of the plans. Is this necessary? My mom asked the doctor, is this necessary? The doctor goes, well, you know, it's not an emergency, you know, you don't have to do it, but we recommend you do it because the baby's heart rate is dropping. And by the way, the baby's heart rate was at 117, right? Low, but from what I've heard, not low enough to where it's an emergency, which is what the doctor was saying. It's not an emergency, but we think you should go ahead and get it. Of course I think we should go ahead and get it, because they're gonna get money from a C-section, more money than they would if I were just to have a natural birth. It's an easier process. They can just cut me, pop out the baby, get it open with, without any concern what that's going to have on my body and long term, what that's going to do to my baby, because perhaps maybe she was not ready to come out. Just not really, just a lack of consideration. So it's about, I would say, an hour passes by. My mom says, hey, can you guys just run some ultrasounds on the baby, see if you can find the heartbeat, like, or yeah, monitor the baby closely, like, please just do all these things before we just immediately rush to C-section being our only option. So the doctors do that. They still are like, well, we still think you should get the C-section. And now fast forward a little bit more, I'm just like sitting here like just done and over with. I'm just ready to just, like, I'm still over this process. And so I remember at one point everyone in the room kind of just looking at me, and the doctor's like, so what are you gonna do? And I'm just sitting here like, and by the way, it wasn't just like it was like a whole team of doctors who came, and like they were ready, basically. Like a whole team of doctors and surgeons came in the room, like, and they were like, okay, so here's what's gonna happen. And I'm just like, I haven't even firmly made the decision yet. So it kind of felt like they made the decision for me. And there was one doctor who was really nice, and she was just like, okay, so I'm gonna explain to you the rules. This was gonna happen to have you decide that you're going to have the C-section. Once again, still haven't actually decided. And so I'm over here thinking, right? I'm like, okay, I really want a natural birth. I do not want a C-section. That was one of my biggest things that I said I do not want to do. But at the same time, I'm thinking, they're telling me that, the doctors are telling me that my heart rate, or my baby's heart rate, is dropping, and I would have an immense amount of pain and guilt if anything were to happen or to come out of this experience of me naturally giving birth to my baby. And I was at the center of why that happened, because I didn't just go have the C-section when the doctors were recommending it. Now, deep down inside, I did really think it was not necessary. I really did think that they just wanted to get me out of there. I really do. But on the slight chance that they were right and they were having my best interest in mind, I decided to just go ahead and get the C-section. And so I remember my parents, my boyfriend, my nana, everyone who was in the room just looking at me like they felt so bad and so sorry for me. But in that moment, other than my mom, because I will say my mom was speaking up, I personally felt like no one really wanted to say anything because they wanted it to be my decision. But in that moment, I really did need help and clarity to come to like a consensus there, because not only was I drugged out, but it was a lot to deal with in that moment to have a decision like that. And I just wish I would have had some voices, some sort of input, especially for all these individuals who have so much to say about my life in everyday life. Like, it's such an important decision like this. It just felt like, okay, well, now you have to decide. And I get that it's my body, like I understand it, but I just wish I would have had some voices of reason to help me in that moment, rather than just all of the spotlight be put on me, and I'm just not in the position to do that. Not to mention my doula was there, who I literally paid for to do this job, didn't say anything. And I remember after the birth, she did like come talk to me and my mom, and she was basically like, I'm so sorry that I didn't help you or give you as much help as I felt like in that moment. It's just in that moment I felt like I couldn't really do anything because the doctors were recommending this, and I didn't want to say anything otherwise and be implicated for that. But I'm like, isn't that your job though? That's kind of your job. So I mean, she was so nice. I love her so much, but I just don't think that was, I don't know what she was thinking in that moment. But like, we literally like hired you to do this, like help us with this, and you just weren't there. So, and by the way, the other part that she would have been there to help me with would have been the actual like birthing process, like the natural birthing process. But obviously I didn't have that because I had to be refined to the bed the whole time. So like none of those positions and like the peanut ball and all those stuff and all those cool techniques of birth, I did not get to experience that with my doula because I was restricted to the bed. So fun. Anyways, so come time to the C-section, right? So when I tell this part of the story, I don't want to like harp on it, because I do know this is the reality of a lot of people who could not give birth naturally, and they have emergency C-sections, or this was the only way that they were able to give birth, just like me. And so like, I don't mean to rip on the C-section process, because specifically it wasn't bad either. Like, the actual surgery was not bad. It was quite literally a 45-minute surgery. And like, it was kind of just like, poof, the baby's here. I can walk you through like what happened leading up to it. So basically, I left the room with my parents, got wheeled down to the other room, and then they took my boyfriend to another section where he had to put on like the scrubs, like the hat and like the thing. I can share some pictures over here. And then after that, I had on the gown, and then they once again briefly like told me the instructions of what I had to do for this part, because they kind of explained it when I was in the hospital room with everyone. But when I got wheeled into this part, they're like, okay, so we're just gonna explain one more time, and then we're gonna put this needle in your back. And I'm like, oh shoot. So with the needle, I assume, like, I don't know exactly what the name of it was. I'm not a health professional, I don't know. But it was basically like numbing agent, basically. And so I imagine it's what the epidural would have been had I chosen to do that during the natural birth, where they just like, you know, you have to go like this, like relax, slump your shoulders, and they put it in your spine. And then basically I felt like a big like sting at first, but then like literally 2 seconds passed by, didn't feel anything. Like, it was like immense pain, sting, and then 2 seconds passed and I feel nothing, like nothing. I couldn't feel my legs, I couldn't feel nothing. They're like touching my legs, couldn't feel anything. So that was kind of cool experience to deal with, because literally I was put on the table, laid there, and they put up the little curtain thing so I couldn't see anything, and basically just did their job. They cut me open, did what they had to do. There was my favorite thing about this part was actually because none of our other like family friends could not be, well, first of all, I wouldn't be friends, it would have just been my mom in the room with us, but because she wasn't able to be there or whatever, there was actually what's it called, a nurse. I think it's like her specific job is basically to like take pictures and to like comfort the parents throughout that whole C-section process. So she was right here, like above my head, and I remember she was like just taking pictures of us, taking pictures like over the like curtain whenever the baby popped up, and like the nurse or the surgeon held up the baby, she took pictures of the baby. And I remember the second that my baby was put over the curtain and then she started crying, I started crying. Like, it was just like if I were to give birth naturally. The second I heard my baby cry, I was like hit with emotion. So, you know, the actual C-section like process itself was not bad. I do want to go over one thing real quick. Basically, when I got into the room, it was like, I feel like a bunch of people were like, there was like students who were like studying it, right? So basically, I don't know if this is standard procedure, but I just remember there being like 20 people in the surgery room. And I remember I walked into the room and then basically they like explained my whole thing like I was like a study case or something. They're like, okay, so this is patient, female, Serenity Warren, 20 years old, Black, African American, about to give birth, C-section. I don't even know. It was like a brief study like that, and I was like, ooh, like, am I a specimen right now? Like, I feel kind of weird. I hear my baby crying right now, so I had to speed this up a little bit. Okay, so anyway, so it wasn't the actual C-section that was bad, it was the recovery process. I remember after the C-section, they wheeled me over to another room, and basically this is where they took the baby to do all the like measurements, vitals on the baby, I don't really know. And then they like gave her to me, and I was like, y'all expect me to hold this baby right now after I just got cut open and I'm tired? Like, so I'm just sitting there. I remember I was sitting there with my baby, like admiring her so much. I'm like, oh, she's so precious. But at the same time, I'm like, I am so sleepy and I just want to go to sleep. I just remember like low-key. And by the way, they had like left me with her for a little bit, I guess for like mother bonding time, which I appreciate because I would have gotten that in a normal birth. They would have put the baby on my chest and I would have had some time with her, skin to skin. It happened like 20 minutes after her being born, but they gave it to me, but I was like just exhausted by this point. They let my boyfriend come back in the room. That's when like everyone else like slowly started trickling in my family who was at the hospital. Like, they came in that room for a brief amount of time to see the baby, and then after I was in that room, I want to say maybe for about 2 hours, then they transported me back into labor and delivery, and then we were just in, oh no, we got actually transported to another floor on labor and delivery. So how our hospital worked was there was the original floor that we were in, and then the second you had the baby, they transported you to another room, which I actually liked the first room better because the first room I felt like had more room, just me and my preference. But then the second room was like not as much room or whatever. But anyway, so then we were there, and I remember they were checking my baby for like jaundice and all those sort of things that they like first check it before, like when you're in the room. They were weighing my baby, they were trying to make sure she was warm, and there was something with her temperature. I remember like it wasn't bad, but they were saying it wasn't how they needed it to be at, like she was too cold or something. During that whole process, I was slumped. I was asleep like this, and I remember the last thing I remember seeing is looking over and seeing my boyfriend like hovering over the baby because like they're all freaking out about the temperature. But he was just being like a paranoid first-time parent. It was really cute. Like, the doctors knew there wasn't really anything wrong with her. They were just like, her temperature's a little bit low. And my boyfriend was like, oh my gosh, my baby. So while he was like taking care and monitoring that situation, I took that time to pass out. Like, the second I got in the room, I was like, okay, I'm done. And so I probably woke up like 2 or 3 hours later, I don't remember. And then that's when I finally like took the time to look at my baby and cuddle with my baby, see her, and I was like, oh, she's like the cutest thing in the world. But yeah, guys, I mean, that's pretty much it about my birth story. The only other thing I will say was that the hospital, they did have really good care with like coming into the room, taking care of the baby, helping us figure out how to do the swaddling correctly. They had videos for us to watch that we had to watch before we got home, on like baby care and stuff like that. And they had a lot of like, they would give us like free drinks and stuff, and well, and not a part of like the, you know, the hospital plan, like just from the, what's it called, where the staff sit, like from that area, they would come in and give us some like free Gatorade. They had like a big bag. By the way, guys, always utilize taking all that supplies that they give you for free when you give birth. Diapers, all the stuff for postpartum care. They have all of that stuff out there in the room. And every hospital is different on how much they give you or what they give you, but they do give you free things. And make sure to stack up. If you run out while you're there, make sure to stack up before you go home, because you're paying for that stuff. It's free, but it's not really free because you do pay for it. So anyways, the baby's here. So while I'm closing out this story, I'm gonna say that the hospital was kind of rushing us out a little bit. I think it's because they just didn't have, like, they had a lot of people who were, I guess, giving birth that week, and we were just taking up a room. I don't really know, but I was on really bad C-section recovery. Oh, what I didn't mention was I was still restricted to the bed for the 24 hours after birth. So I could not move after birth as well. And then when I could move, I could barely move because my feet were still really, really swollen. In fact, they had become even more swollen to the point where it had literally went from my feet all the way up to my legs and my thighs, where every time I was walking, it was like I was walking on jello. Every time I would hit the ground, I could like feel it vibrating. It was really bad. So I could barely walk, and using the bathroom was really hard. I had to get help every time I had to move somewhere, and the hospital basically kind of rushed me out. Like, they were like, okay, it's been 2 days after you gave birth, you should probably leave. And I'm like, guys, like, I don't think I can go back home because I can barely move. Like, so anyways, that's another story for another day. But what I will say is, take care of mothers postpartum when they first give birth mentally, because I think a lot of people look after the physical needs, what they can see with their eyes. If the mother is struggling, taking care of the baby, especially after a C-section, breastfeeding the baby, all of those things, they can help with their physical needs. But mentally, they might be overlooked when all the family comes over, family and friends come over, and they just want to see the baby. They kind of disregard the mother and go straight for the baby. Oh my gosh, like, the baby's here, but not really congratulating the mother on what a good job she did to bring the baby here. C-section or not, it's a lot of work. It's really rough on the mother. I know for me, it was rough for me for the first 2 weeks after giving birth because I could still barely walk and I had to get help going everywhere. To this day, my C-section scar hurts sometimes if I overexert myself with exercise. It'll sting, and I forever have a mom pouch because of C-section, and I'm 21 years old. So C-sections can do a lot to your body. Birth can do a lot with your hormones in your body. So it's a big achievement, but also really, really big thing for moms to go through. So just make sure to be there mentally for mothers postpartum. As we know, postpartum depression is a thing. I think that I possibly could have dealt with postpartum depression, but because of the type of personality that I have, anytime I start to feel any sort of depression or sadness, I don't let myself resonate in that. I kind of just like, okay, like, you feel this, but you don't. Like, I just completely just disregard it and push myself even harder so I can't feel it. And I know that's probably something that's not healthy, but that's what helped me get through this first 10 months of having a baby. It's nonstop. We haven't spent a single day apart since she's been born. So that's a lot to deal with, right? I don't have daycare. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm also a student, full-time online. A lot, it's really a lot mentally. So all I gotta say is just check up on your mothers, your recent new moms. Check up on them. But anyways, that's it for today's video. Say bye-bye. Bye. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you liked today's video. I will add this to my storytime playlist if you guys want to watch my other storytime videos. But anyways, that's all. Bye.
Now when they see us in the streets, all they wanna do is take pics, and I'm like, okay. And when they hear us on the beat, all they wanna do is make hits, and I'm like, okay. Now when they see us in the streets,